it's the minutia of the equipment that I'm getting more into now instead of the base level. Here's how you decide which handcuffs you want to use or what type of belt you want to use or what type of holster you want to use. And technology has been pushing further. So I'm trying to go both of those directions because there's people that watch the channel just for the advice stuff. And there's people that watch the channel just because they want to see the latest and greatest cool equipment. And then there's people that watch the channel just because they want me to see me put cool shit in a bag. So every few months I like to put cool shit in a bag and be like, here's my duty bag. Here's the bag in the back of my trunk. Here's how you can make an active shooter bag, stuff like that. Because for whatever reason, that's a huge demographic on YouTube.
I think
like duty belt videos and stuff, which it always blows my mind that people want to see it, but if people want to see it, I'll do it, right? Like, room full of gear.
I think your most popular video is what's in my patrol bag in my trunk, right?
Which I did not anticipate was going to get more than like 1,000 views when I made it. I was like,
3 million.
It's just shit in a bag. I didn't even talk about my rifle much.
What was it about that video that got to 3 million views? That's like the top 0.01% of YouTubers have a video with 3 million. What was it about that video? Maybe this is a good topic for other YouTubers out there. What was it specifically? Because I know when you made that video, you didn't make it thinking this is going to be the video that gets 3 million.
I was in Adidas running pants in my garage with a folding table. Right? Like the production quality was not top notch. I think a buddy of mine who's no longer a cop anymore, he went back to work in probation, said, he's like, people watch your videos. He's like, you want to know why some videos do well and some don't. He's like, what people watch your videos for is they want to see the curtain drawn back. They want to see what's behind what admin says. They want to see what's behind the episode of Cops. And I think police car trunk gear is one of those things that we're like, people don't know it hits the realities of the job. It hits the Geardo people that want to see what gear you're using. It hits people that want to make fun of the gear police use. It hits people that are just don't like the police, want to come out and argue, that's great for the algorithm as far as I'm concerned. Ups, downs, doesn't matter to me. It's all engagement. Yeah. And so it hits all of those demographics. But I think the big thing it hits is it's pulling the curtain back. I get a lot of angry comments on there from people that hate the police. They're like, the first 2 minutes is you explaining why this big bag's in your trunk. Just get into it. I just want to see what you have. And then other people are like, that's really interesting that you have to share a car. I'm from rural Tennessee and none of our deputies share cars. You have to share a car? Like, yeah, you got 90 people on your police department. They're not buying 90 cars, bro. That's not how it works. Chicago's got 10,000 cops. Do you think I don't know. That number might not be accurate anymore, but if you got 10,000 cops, right? Like, I know they had a lot of retirements. You got a town with 10,000 cops, you're not going to buy 10,000 cars and send them all home. The city streets would be littered with squad cars and they'd be constantly getting hit, sideswiped. People here, a lot of them don't have a garage to put that car in. They don't have a driveway to park it in. So it's going to be parked on the street. It's going to get sideswiped. Just causes more hassles. So like the idea, just the very nature that like, hey, this is the big bag I have. And I put it in, like I have it in the trunk of my car and I can put it into my locker at work and then I can put it into the squad and then all my stuff's in this one big bag. And then I can take the rifle and put it in the rifle rack. And now I've got this big bag of gear that, I can use for medical emergencies or getting in, things that are locked. And I can use it for, if I get a hazmat situation, get a big Tyvek suit and stuff in there. Like, it's like, this is all the stuff. And then I don't have to go searching in my locker to find my riot gear. It's in that big bag, and then I've got 2 handles and it goes and out it goes. And for a lot of people, I think that's the most interesting thing is just seeing behind the curtain. And I try to think about that a lot when I make videos, if I'm trying to get good engagement on them. Some of them just never will. Note taking is never going to be a number one. Yeah. But if you can pull the curtain back a little bit on how police work actually works, I think a lot of people really enjoy hearing about it. And that's what I think. That's where I always try to head. Because it's good for the more engagement you get, the more butts are in the seats. It's better for everything. You get the education out there. People see the monetized videos. They see the videos on gear reviews, which allows me to get more gear to talk about more gear reviews, which allows people to use coupon codes or Amazon affiliate links, which make a little bit of money. And so that keeps the project moving forward.
Yeah. So I think that's a good transition point to the second half of this conversation. So I want to talk to you about relationships with companies like 221B Tactical. And I know that you had some questions for me, but one of the things that we enjoy is working with people like you. Dare I call you an influencer? And
I'm
so
definitely not in the core demographic of influencers. Short, overweight, ghetto cops.
so I wanna talk to you about that aspect, and I I know you have some questions for me, but I enjoy um, working with someone like you to do an authentic review of a product that I designed and developed while a cop, and now someone who is now out there using it in the field. I used a lot of the products I developed while I was on the job. I designed them and developed them while I was on the job. You're out there now, and when you see products coming through from, let's say, a company like 221B Tactical, um, are you giving the feedback? Because I know sometimes people will just send you things, and this is something that I know that a lot of people just get shit sent to them. Now, if you have a breakdown with something, or you see a flaw, or you see an area for improvement, are you going back to these companies? And then we can get into talking to me about 221B and how I came up with the gear. But are you doing that? Do they give you an outlet to do that? And when you do it, are they listening?
So from a business standpoint with equipment companies, generally speaking, how it goes is they're gonna reach out to me, because there's very few companies out there I've ever reached out to and been like, we should work together. Very, very few. Almost all of them, I think, reach out to me, and they'll generally be like, we just want you to send you this product. And generally speaking, I'll be like, I don't know. Because it's always somebody that's trying to break into a new market, that's going and finding people on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and stuff to tell people about their stuff. And generally speaking, they'll want to say, well, let's just send you a couple things and see what you think of them. And there's a couple routes if there's a problem, since you brought that up, that I go with. One is if I think the problem is endemic to the product, or it's, how to put it, it's something that's below what the industry standard is. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other things that, like legacy products, that do the job better. Mm-hmm. And I think that they're below what the industry standard is, and that's endemic to the product, not a production issue, because I have had that before as well. Mm-hmm. And I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt with it, with production issues, right? Like if there's a product problem with something and they sent me two of them, I'm going to test both of them and make sure, okay, this is a problem with the way this is designed, or the what's being used here, not, somebody missed a stitch in a glove, and so now there's a hole through the cut-proof lining. Like, we outsource production of this body armor, and somebody used the wrong material, or it wasn't assembled right, or the drunk guy on a Thursday built your car. Like, my Explorer at work was built probably by somebody who was drunk on a Thursday. They tied one on Thursday night and they built it on a Friday. If it's like screws weren't assembled into it, that's different than the design of the product. Sure. And so if I get something that I see clearly, screws weren't assembled right, or like, hey, I got a backpack one time, and I might have it around here, it's not worth searching for, but I got it and there were stitches blown out of it. Straight, like, they sent it to me. It's like, dude, you knew you were sending this to me to T&E.
Exactly.
Here's a picture. You sent me this thing with the stitches blown out. You had every opportunity to go through and go, because like, if you wanted to send me something and you wanted to handpick what it was, you could do that. And then you could be like, take it to your guy and be like, yeah, ship this to the fat guy on YouTube, right? Like, have him test this thing, right? And we're going to put 8 different cut resistant liners in it, and he's going to think this is great, and that's not what we're actually producing. Like, you could do that, but like, if I did something and it's like busted stitches and stuff, I'm like, hey, I send him an email. It looks like whoever's manufacturing this for you decided that actually making it wasn't super important that day. If I get something that's just under industry standards, body armor that doesn't stop bullets, stuff like that, like sometimes we'll test 2 or 3 of whatever vests they send, or the front panels and stopping bullets, like, oh, let's flip this thing around and ship it back, see if maybe, because they have to be basically, they're the same production line, but maybe different days or something, we'll get a better representation. I can go to the company and be like, hey, this isn't stopping bullets, but if all the stuff they sent me doesn't stop bullets, then we got a problem. Most of the issues that I have with equipment is just design issues. It's stuff that this wasn't designed to the standard, or it wasn't designed for the job. And the big issue that I take with most companies is they design something, it's not designed for the job, it's designed for marketing. They design it to market it to a huge, broad audience. And my thing with flashlights is always there's a big difference between a company that's making police duty flashlights and a company that's making flashlights and marketing them to police. Because if you type police flashlight into Google, what's going to come up here? I'm showing my age typing into Google. What's going to come up is all sorts of people that spent a lot of money on marketing and put police, tow, fire, survivalist, camping, whatever, and you're going to get a flashlight that's going to shine a light. And then what they're doing is they're fighting for those high lumen numbers because that's what people are looking at. Your average consumer, that's what they're looking at. And if you flip it around, your average cop, once they get the light, they're looking at how long is this light going to run to where I can see across the street on a barricade. How well is this light going to light an alley? It doesn't matter how far it throws if I can't light an alley up with it and look for shell casings. If I got a spot this big with no corona and spill or very little, that doesn't help me any. So it's a matter of, does the product, is it better or at least as good as something that's already on the market? And if it's not, is that an issue with the core design of it? Or is it an issue with how production was done? Because I've had several companies that I've contacted about production issues, about material issues. They're like, hey, this doesn't meet this standard. And then they freak out and they get angry. And then I hear from them about 6 months later and they're like, now that we think of it, maybe we don't want to make the tail cap switch on the flashlight just magnet mount on the back, because some guns have more recoil than an AR. And if somebody puts that on there and it goes flying off, that could be an issue, a liability issue for us. Hey, you know what? You're right. We went and took a representative sampling and found out that 10% of the duty bags that we built have blowouts in the stitching at the bottom on one of, double stitching or triple stitching at the bottom. Well, if the manufacturer, wherever, decides that they're only going to put a single stitch in because it saves production costs and they don't tell the designer of it, you as the designer might not know, because you triple stitch and then they put a little, I forget what it's called, but it's like a little piece of trim around it and stitch around. Well, if they just stick it together and put a piece around and stitch it, you're not going to know until you load that with crap and carry it around for 6 months that this is only single stitched in the bottom. And I've had companies that I've gone to is like, hey, this says this triple stitch on the bottom. You know that it's not, right? Oh, really? And you take video and go, here it is. Mm-hmm. But I've had companies that have sent me stuff that they market it as something and you get it and try to use it for that purpose and it immediately breaks. Yeah. I've had things fail on, I had a tactical pen fall apart on a live stream. I was doing a giveaway and I was like, we got this tactical pen. Hey, it's not police work related really, but they wanted to send it. They didn't ask me first. Here it is. Sorry. Here it is. And we went to use it and it wouldn't work like at all. Live. It's just out of nowhere. And I get that type of stuff all the time. So it kind of depends on whether I think it's something that this is the way the product is and it just isn't as good as other stuff that I've used, or if it's a design issue, or if it's a manufacturing or materials issue that might not be that company's fault. Because people don't know, but almost everything is outsourced production. There's very few companies where the designer and the production is all under one roof. Not for everything, at least. You're not going to have, there isn't a company that's making duty belts and body armor and gloves and knives and flashlights and key clips where they're making all of that in-house under one roof. Almost all flashlights are outsourced somewhere. They might be assembled in the USA, but all the components are outsourced. And so you could get, a flashlight where the designer has the best of intentions and says, hey, I made this. I made it to run 2 hours between charges and it puts out 800 lumens. It's got decent throw and decent spill. And this is going to be a great police duty light. And then you get it and you're like, hey, this battery in here is only, like 1,000 mAh, whatever a mAh is, right? And all these other ones are marked 3,000 mAh. Think that could be an issue? Because when I put this on the table and turn it on, it doesn't do, and they're like, oh, that's not the spec that we asked for. this wasn't designed to use the cheapest possible 18650 battery in it. And that's sometimes that's just kind of has to be a judgment call on my part, but I like to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Sure. Yeah, I think that
if I
when
can.
you're designing, a lot of times as someone who does production, I know that a lot of times when our factory sends us a prototype, the prototype is phenomenal. And this is when we didn't have our own factories. We have our own factories now, but prior to that, when we were outsourcing to other factories and we would request a prototype, something I would design, I would send them the design sample and they would send a prototype, and everything was, like you said, triple stitch, bar tacked,
Yep.
a bomb proof. And you're like, this is awesome. Approved. Let's do it. You put in the order for 1,000 pieces, and the 1,000 pieces come in, and you just assume that they're as good as the prototype sample they sent you. And then you get someone send a picture in on Instagram saying, hey, this bag kind of like the corner fell apart. And I'm like, that's not possible. And then they send the photo, and you're like, wait a second. Hold on. You got to go back to the
I got screwed.
You screwed me. So,
Yep.
that's up, as any company grows, that's an issue. Now that we kind of have a better handle on the manufacturing because we kind of own them, and it's not in-house here in the States, but in-house overseas per se, we have a much better finger on the pulse of the quality control. And unlike those other factories, there's not pulling a fast one on you. They know that there's a quality inspector that's going to look through, randomly pull products, test them, make sure that they're still up to the standard of what the original sample was meant to be. And that alone might be one of the most integral parts of how 221B Tactical got to where we are, which was our customer service and our quality control. That was part of the reason why I started it, was because I was buying 511 stuff, I was buying other stuff, mechanics wear, all that stuff. And I started to notice the quality going down so fast. And when you buy a pair of gloves, I'm not looking for a pair of gloves for patrol to last my career, but I was looking for them to last a little bit more than 3 months before they start getting holes in them.
Yeah.
I wasn't ripping that many cars. So, and I'm not fast roping with the SWAT team. No, I'm on patrol, slipping the gloves on when I think I'm about to go search a car, and then taking the gloves back off, or putting the gloves on when I think I might be going to a call where someone's a little spicy, and then taking the gloves off. That little bit of work for gloves, 3 months, they shouldn't be falling apart. So that's part of why I said, I want to start something and put a little bit more quality into it, a little bit more money into it, but it's going to last a little bit longer. One of the issues we have is that when people get some of our stuff, like the Max Dry vest, we have people posting pictures on Facebook saying, I got this thing 5 years ago and it's like brand new. I'm like, oh, damn it. Because, we want them to buy the next one, of course. Naturally, we have new models. We're coming out with a 5th generation of it. And part of me is like, man, that's awesome. They bought something in 2015. It's 2021 when, the last picture we got last year. And we're like, it still looks brand new. It still works awesome. Good that it's still working awesome. The product hasn't broke down, hasn't had any issues. They've washed it a million times. Bad from the standpoint of, this is someone who really has no need to get our new model, our next generation. We're not like Apple, where the phone eventually stops working as well, and then the software upgrades don't go through and all that stuff. So we're not in that situation. We're making a product that you could, if you buy a Max Dry vest, you could literally have it for your entire career. So long as you never drag it behind a car, or it never gets caught up in the washing machine, during the spin cycle, you could literally have it for your entire career. And I enjoy that side of it. From a sales point, you always want to sell more, but I enjoy the fact that people are getting a quality product and they're buying it once. Even boots. I was going through boots every year, and boots were expensive because I enjoyed a nice pair of boots that was comfortable. If I'm going to be on patrol, walking around in the car, I wanted good boots, good quality boots. And I know boots is another thing all about. So I would tell young guys, don't cheap out on the boots you pick. Get good quality boots. So that was how 221B really rose up so quick. We had stuff that no one else had through innovation, but it was just giving people their money's worth. That's all I thought it was, giving people their money's worth, and customer service. And the customer service was key, because you would call some of these companies and the customer service was atrocious.
Well, quality control that's one of the most one of the awesome things about people sending me stuff is that, and I make fun of it all the time. I get just junk in the mail. It's just junk, somebody repackaging, this type of stuff. I don't even know what company this is, but just like, hey, we got this
the
knife.
EMS symbol knife. Yes.
Yeah, the EMS symbol knife that's also the blue line knife and the red line knife. It's just the cheapest knife that you could possibly ever get. And they just put a logo on it like, oh, it's a police knife. I get that type of stuff. But quality control, I'm constantly amazed that the quality control you get from large companies, and I think I see it the most in boots. I have to give people the most caveats. Like you could buy a cheap pair of gloves and just buy a new cheap pair of gloves every year. I know guys that just wear baseball gloves, and you could probably get away with it unless you get into something kind of hairy where it's going to rip a hole through the glove. Like it could do most of its job. But with boots, there is such an amazing difference, and you can't trust the price of them at all. I get boots in that I'm like, this is a gym shoe.
Yeah.
It's not a boot. You did not produce a boot. You produced a gym shoe and you put leather on it. That's not a boot.
Yeah.
It's just because it meets uniform standard doesn't make it a boot. Like this isn't a boot. And it's the big, I won't call anybody out, but it's the big companies pulling that crap. Big gym shoe companies pulling this is a duty boot. And you're like, this is barely a good gym shoe. It's like there's no protection, right? Like I should not be able to take a boot, like this is a boot from a real boot maker, right? And I can't bend it in half because there's a shank in there. If you pick your boot up, and it does this. That's my house slipper, right? Like that's not a boot. But I'm constantly amazed that it's the smaller companies that seem to do a better job with their quality control because you guys couldn't sell this as garbage. These like match dry vests couldn't sell this if it was falling apart in a year and then get word of mouth where other people are going to want to buy it. Yeah. So I see it the opposite way. It makes it really easy for me to be like, hey, they said that this vest thing, if you put it under your vest when you have to wear, soft body armor under a uniform, that it would make it more comfortable. I put it on after a couple of days. Like, that's actually doesn't like it does. That's crazy, and it didn't fall apart. That's even crazier, right? Like, that makes my job real easy to be able to be like, yeah, this actually does what it says it does, and it lasts forever. And I would rather align myself as an individual. I would rather align myself as an individual and as a company with other manufacturers and companies and individuals that are trying to sell somebody something that is going to work for more than a year. Yeah. It's an easy sell. Somebody's like, yeah, I bought this and I really like it. I've had it for a couple of years now. I think that's the best endorsement you ever get. When I see I have a new product, I'm like, hey, I just got this thing in and I've used it a little bit and it's all right. And here's some ups and downs of it. And then people come in the comment section like, yeah, I had this problem with, sorry, that's work calling me for the 400th time. I have this problem with the Velcro starts to wear out, but I stitched new Velcro over the top of it, and I've had this thing for 3 years now, and it still does the job. The only thing that wears out is the Velcro, and I think that's the best. Like I could try to tell people this is a good product, but when I tell people about it, and then people come in the comments section like, yeah, I've had this pair of gloves for 4 years now. I wash them once a week, and I haven't blown a stitch yet. Yeah, there's big companies. Real big companies making gloves that you wash them 4 or 5 times and the stitches are going to start to blow out. Yeah. Because as you know, there's only so much, you give people so much flexibility, but something's got to give to have that flexibility. Yeah. You can't make a glove like you make a duty bag and just be like, let's just overbuild the shit out of it. Right. Just overbuild the shit out of it and then it's going to work. Because it won't work. People will be like, all right, well, now I can't feel anything through the glove and I can't move my hand. What good is this? You have to strike that balance. But when people come in, they're like, actually, I bought those gloves a couple of years ago and I still haven't blown a stitch on them, which is way better than, XYZ brand that I had before. That's like the really big name stuff. That's your best endorsement. It's not me. It's the other person that stops on and says, hey, like I had these too, and I had a similar issue, but here's how I fixed the issue. And now it's not a problem anymore. And I love this thing, and I think that for a certain perspective, that's sometimes how businesses, learn lessons on stuff. I know that's why now modern body armor vests don't use, there's an example of the Velcro. They don't use this type of Velcro where it's the thick fuzzy.
Oh
Velcro.
yeah.
They use what's the
That like plastic kind of Velcro.
Yeah, they now use like one wrap Velcro for body armor. Because
Yes.
when you take that vest on and off, especially, if you're taking that vest on and off to go use the bathroom, like taking that vest on and off 4 or 5 times a day, you use Velcro 4 or 5 times a day, it's going to wear out. It
Yeah.
just is. And so they went to more companies went to like a one wrap Velcro that has less sticky, and the loop side is a lower, like fluff. I don't know what the technical term is for
Pile.
pile, a lower pile. It
Yeah.
doesn't stick, and it doesn't catch on things. It doesn't ruin uniforms. And so companies have shifted that direction. I think most of that is from feedback from people like, hey, yeah, I love this carrier. It's super comfortable, but the Velcro starts to wear out. And they're like, all right, what can we do that won't break the bank to make this Velcro better?
Yeah.
So that we can get the 5-year service life. When I started on the job, you weren't getting 5-year service life out of anything related to your vest. Like the vest was good for 5 years, but your carrier and stuff was just holes in them and stuff after a couple of years. Then you had to buy more carriers for them, things like that. So I think that's probably where most companies get the most feedback, is from people that are like, I love this thing, except this one thing that's wrong with it. Like I love this thing, but there's this, the Velcro on this side wore out. So I had to staple that in place and use the Velcro on the other side. And it gives somebody like you the idea, like, all right, well, how can we improve this Velcro? Or you'd be like, well, we improved the Velcro, and now the new product uses a much higher quality Velcro. So I mean, the match drive vest will work for your whole career, but this new one uses this new stuff that is even better. And I think from the standpoint of trying to tell people about new products, it gives me something to talk about. So I like it when companies update their stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's your greatest endorsement, is when somebody says, yeah, I've used that and I use it until it completely wore out. I love hearing the stories about how people broke things.
Yeah.
I think that's telling. When somebody's like, yeah, I finally broke this light. Well, what did you do? Well, it was attached to my rifle, and I dropped it off the rappelling tower. It broke.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, that's kind of to be expected. Like, yeah, but I had it for like 10 years. It worked great. I had to go buy a new one. I upgraded to their new product because I dropped the other one off the rappelling tower. Stories like that.
And when I've heard stories like that, and then they say, finally, that's what broke it. I upgraded to the new one, and the new one sucks. The quality isn't there. They must have done something. The one I've had for 10 years is a way better build quality than the new one. We've all heard that one before too. So why do you think we hear that so often when someone has a product from a company and they've had it for years, and then they get the new version of it because it finally breaks, they finally lose whatever, and they're like, this thing sucks. This isn't anything like the quality, the build of the original one. What happened? Why do companies do that?
Well, because they're taking brand new designs and then calling them the old thing. Flashlight companies are pretty good about that. Car companies are the worst about it.
Yeah.
Like if you owned a Ford Taurus we're about comparable age. If you owned a Ford Taurus your entire life, you could have had anything from a sports car to something that my mom would be embarrassed to get groceries in.
Yeah.
And you could have something super reliable to something that blew up if you redlined it too long because it's a sports car, and everything in between. So it's part of that, I think, is packaging problems. Companies take a new product and they say, well, it's the new and improved widget. And you're expecting it to be the same widget, and it's not. Like the production is completely changed. The design's completely changed. They don't want to call it a new thing because they want people to come back and say, I want the Stinger.
Yeah, right.
I want the Stinger. And the new Stinger comes out, and people are like, I don't like this new one. It's like a mechanic's tool. It's like, well, it doesn't even look the same. So
no. Right.
It's not the same. It's not the same light, right? Like it's just the name. They're just using a name. And I think part of it is that some people think that they can cut their way to success. So companies get in trouble, and instead of trying to figure out what the problem is with their marketing or with the product it's not marketing well, they try to cut their way to success. They say, well, if I can make a widget and I can make that widget for $10 and I can sell it for $20, if I can make it for $5 and sell it for $20, then I can make a lot more money, and then we'll be solvent. And so they outsource production, or they lower the quality of the stuff that they're using, and then you end up with the new and improved widget that is new and not at all improved.
Not
You know,
improved.
you're not, instead of aluminum for the body of the flashlight, you're using pot metal, and instead of an LED that for a while we had problems. It's not so much of an issue anymore, but for a while you'd get the new and improved light, and it would come with an LED that had a very clear green hue to it. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I wonder, they cut the price of this so it would market better, and we got an LED that was garbage in it.
Yeah.
You see that type of stuff all the time. Boots was another great example. Like, you get just junk.
Oh,
You get
seen
just
it.
junk boots. You get junk boots, and it's the same things. There's a company that makes boots, and they actually make two versions of their boots. And the good version is $500 about, and it's made in USA, and it's made their original production facility in the US using US leather and US products, because they have to be very compliant to sell it to the military and to a lot of law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
And then they have their non-USA made, overseas manufactured boot that's half the price. And it's the same name. And you, as the consumer, have to check to see if it's the Berry compliant one with the DOD number, or if it's the overseas manufactured one. Because the overseas manufactured one, they're obviously using, whatever glue they can to glue it down that holds it for a little while, and the things just fall apart. And I think part of it is that outsourcing, that lowering of standards in order to save a little bit of money, thinking that you're going to get a higher profit margin out of it. And I think for most companies, thankfully, that backfires significantly.
Yeah.
I couldn't do what I'm doing now and be like, oh, I'm just going to do it with a point and shoot camera from 2005, do it in 480p, and use my chair with a Gorilla Pod on it and expect success doing what I'm doing now. I couldn't lower my production quality and then expect to be as successful. Like, I'm going to see a decline.
Right.
And I think that's where you get a lot of that. People are like, oh, the new one's not like the old one. But some of it, especially if you're aiming at the law enforcement market like you guys are, some of that is just people don't like change, and I'm as guilty as that as the next guy.
Yeah. So who's doing it right? Who out there? What are the companies that you feel today are doing it right? That you feel are maintaining their quality standards, innovating, coming out with new stuff, needed stuff, good gear, quality that you see throughout your career, 16 years plus, that they're maintaining it. They're holding the line and doing it right.
So obviously I wouldn't be discussing it with you if I didn't think that your quality was up to par and also getting better all the time. I see the new versions of stuff coming out. Sometimes things that might not make my bosses happy, like these hard knuckle gloves that you can't see are hard knuckle gloves. Like, these are the old, this is what hard knuckle gloves look like for decades. And then they were like, oh, well, who needs to know that they're hard knuckle gloves when you just look at them? I mean, that's cool.
That's
right?
exactly why I designed those like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, and these, and for people that don't know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with, like, the police departments, like, you could get away with having this and no one will ever know, and so it's never an issue. What this is primarily used for around me is protecting your hands from broken glass and stuff. This is where you're going through the window of the business that hits the top of the glove, and that's a big issue. Being able to put the big hard pads in there without your boss being like, "Oh, we got to make a rule against those," because if you punch people with these, you're still going to break your knuckles. It doesn't really help.
Yeah.
But like, that type of thing is awesome. I think as far as other glove manufacturers, Hatch is still doing it right. I still have Hatch gloves, and they've come in. They're not somebody I have a business association with, but they are still making. I haven't seen a drop in quality of their gloves. Now, their stuff, you have to realize that some of it is made to a price point, and some of it is made really high quality. So you have to make sure that the gloves you're getting from whatever company you are, if you're looking at cut-resistant gloves, you need to know that there's a difference between just putting cut-resistant material on a palm and then the whole glove having a cut-resistant liner in it. But they're pretty open and honest about that if you read the packaging. As far as boots, Hikes is a German company. They are making very good boots. Danner is making good boots as long as you're buying their American production. Safariland's legacy models of holsters, there were problems with the 7TS when it first came out. Most of that, I think, has been sorted away. But all of their legacy ALS, SLS holsters, those are awesome. Asp has been innovating a lot in the flashlight market, which I didn't anticipate from them. They're doing really well. And their batons have gotten significantly better from when I started. If you remember Asp batons from when you were on the job, the Asp
Yeah.
branded batons. They were the this is actually an Asp. Well, here's one. This is my favorite Asp baton because it's broken. This is the old 20-year-old design that's
Yep.
friction lock. And so you would
Yep.
extend this and then beat it off the floor. And then your modern design of Asp batons might actually have my belt right now. They all have a push button. So you can open it and then you push the button to close it. And
Okay.
that's become kind of their industry standard. Like that's what, when they show people stuff, they're not showing them the friction lock stuff anymore. Like you can still buy these if you want them, but why wouldn't you want a push button to close it
Yeah.
so you're not beating it off the ground all the time? They're doing really great innovative stuff. Safe Life Defense is a body armor company that went from a dude's garage to manufacturing stuff that's meeting all of the different standards across the board. They've got like flexible rifle protected vests. They've got one of the thinnest and lightest vests that's on the market now. They've got a 3A plus that stops, most FN57 rounds, like 55 grain on Liberty Civil Defense 9mm. They've been killing it lately. There's PowerTac flashlights is a little known American company that's doing great things. Even Maglite still makes all of their production in the United States.
They do. Yeah.
And while their lights are not cutting edge, you are still getting a very quality product out of Maglite. Like if you go buy a 4-cell Maglite today or a 3-cell Maglite today, you're going to get more light than you did 20 years ago. You're going to get an LED, and you're going to get something that is going to actually last the test of time. Like you could still pry a door open with a Maglite the way you could 20 years ago, which is good to know. Like I know they're not the cool thing anymore, but if you're a security guard and you got $40 to spend on a flashlight and you need it to run 8 hours and you're going to buy D batteries for it,
that's the way to go.
D batteries now are really cheap. Like it's a viable solution, and they're making the same quality of product they were 25 years ago. They've just upped the technology a little bit. They're the poster child for, instead of reinventing the wheel, the slow progression of technology updating their products.
Yeah, I agree. Maglite, I've been a fan of Maglite. I still have Maglites. To me, that's I'm so glad you said that, because like even you pick up one of the newer Maglites and you're like, it feels just as heavy and just as solid as the Maglite when I started my career back in the early 2000s. So to me, that's a credit to them.
And I have no business relationship with them at all.
Yeah.
Right. Like most law enforcement equipment companies, somewhere along the line, I've gotten something from or have some business association with, or I've met the people. I've never met the people at Maglite. I don't like, they've never sent me anything. I wish they would. If they're watching, send me likes. We'll put them right there. Right. I bought them recently, and I was pleasantly surprised because I bought one for a video about a flashlight technique. And it was just kind of a prop to show people. And I bought one. I was like, this is actually pretty good still. I'm amazed that this aged surprisingly well. But it is what it is. They still make a good product.
They do. So what, and I guess we'll close on this. What's the thing innovation wise that you feel that law enforcement and maybe even the responsible civilian, but let's keep it for law enforcement for now, what's missing? What is something, because you're in this space, you're looking at gear, you're looking at products, what's missing? What do you think the industry needs as far as gear, equipment, and that you feel like is missing? And what's something that you're shocked hasn't come to the industry yet?
What I'm shocked hasn't come to the industry yet is realistic threat assessments. People don't, like cops especially, I still have cops who don't wear their seatbelt and don't want to wear body armor. It's less now than it used to be, but the seatbelt thing, we still fight. We still fight with people wearing their seatbelt. And I'm like, you look at the numbers, some guys are still living in the 70s, which wasn't a time, if you were a cop in the 70s, you shouldn't still be on the road probably today. But you've got guys that are still living in the 70s numbers where, your highest probability of death on the job was gunfire. And I'm like, well, there's more than just getting killed. And also gunfire and getting run over with a car or, hurt in a car collision in some ways, like they're pretty comparable. You should put your seatbelt on. It's free, right? And let's talk about that before we worry about having a backup knife.
Right.
which statistically, that number is real close to this, right? It's
Yeah.
real close to zero, needing a backup get off me knife type of thing. But get off me knives make money, and so people sell them. But there's not a lot of information that would lead someone to believe, like hard information, lead somebody to believe that that's something that they would need. What I'm amazed as far as products hasn't. So like let me step back a second. Like that's like realistic threat assessments that are with the times are something that we need. And part of that is not just the stuff that's killing us. What's the stuff that's injuring us and is a time loss injury? Right? The stuff that's injuring us that's time loss injuries are motor vehicle collisions. And the biggest cause of injury to law enforcement is cuts, punctures, and abrasions.
Okay.
That's the big one. I have been cut. I can't even count the number. I come home and my life's like, you're bleeding. Where am I? Oh, I am bleeding. But that's like, that's the biggest. The latest numbers I saw. That's the biggest time loss injury is cuts, abrasions, and punctures. So, wear cut resistant gloves. Wear gloves that have, protection on the sides. The longer they are, essentially, the better. If you can wear long sleeves, it's cool enough out to wear long sleeves. That sleeve is going to take some of that cut away. Wear your vest, not just for the ballistic protection, but also because punctures and cuts, somebody just a hobo with broken glass slashing at you. I would much rather they get my uniform carrier in my vest, or a cut resistant glove than that they get bare skin or a uniform shirt across my chest, right? Like, but cover as much as you can for the weather. And that's a huge thing that I think those types of threat assessments, and then using those threat assessments to make products that fit the risks that are left today.
Okay.
Gunfire injuries for law enforcement, gunfire fatalities and injuries for law enforcement have plummeted since the 70s. And the reason they plummeted since the 70s, I think, is not because there's a whole lot less risk of gunfire. It's that our training toward dealing with it has gotten better, and the equipment that we have to respond with has gotten better, and the equipment that we have to protect ourselves has gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to start applying that to other things in law enforcement. Back injuries. I am amazed that nobody has come up with a way to make a widget that you can still do your job and bend around with that keeps you from hurting your back. Many companies have tried. We've got there's back braces that you can attach to your duty belt. There's suspenders, but there's nobody has come up with a really universal solution for it other than carry less stuff around, which is the antithesis of what you hear for agencies that are constantly trying to pile more equipment on.
Correct.
But from my time starting on the job, we've gone from put your vest in your gun and at least one mag and a pair of handcuffs and your radio on and let's go, to now you've got body cameras and tasers, and you have to have at least 2 less lethal options. That's most places around me are saying at least 2 less lethal options because they don't ever want to have somebody be like, well, I couldn't do that because I didn't have a baton. I couldn't use a baton. Like, that's not an excuse. We want you to have 2 less lethal options. And then you've got you're adding your body cameras, you're adding ancillary equipment for the body camera. And then it's, well, you have to have your cell phone on. When I started, I don't know if it was the way with you, but you weren't allowed to have your cell phone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now I have to.
We had it. We had that rule.
It's the boss calling, hey, give me a call when you get a chance, right? Like, I mean, sure, I could leave it in the car, but realistically, if I'm making 20 phone calls a day into the office, now you have to have a cell phone when you're on the street. It used to be you couldn't even have it in the car. You're like, oh, you got to leave that in your locker. Now it's you have to have a cell phone. Because we want you to be able to call us in. We're adding all of this gear, and some of it is productive to us not getting injured, and some of it isn't, but it's all causing more weight that causes us to have back injuries. So I'm amazed no one has figured out a way, because you do have $1 million idea, probably more than that if you got government contracts, to keep people from hurting their backs. I'm amazed that cut-resistant material in uniform shirts hasn't become a thing with the number of people that I've seen cut up on their arms. And I'm surprised that there aren't standards for ankle injuries for boots. Because that's a huge, just looking around at the people that are getting hurt where I work, guys are twisting ankles, rolling ankles, breaking ankles constantly because it's in and out of the car, snow, ice, slush, rain, shine, doesn't matter, fighting with people, you just checking a building. We had a guy blow his elbow out because he was checking a building and fell in a hole that was on the side of the building. Because I've never been to this house before, right? Like trundling around and you're trying not to, shine your flashlight constantly while you're doing it. Fell into a hole and his foot went in the hole and it was deep enough where he knocked his elbow off the ground. Now he's got a loss of time injury hurting his elbow. And I'm amazed that boot standards, I mean, that's not something a boot standard would help, but that's the type of injuries we're getting. It's slip and falls. I'm amazed that there's no industry standard for how much lateral protection a boot has to provide.
What about for the use of force, less lethal in that domain? What is something that, because you work in a pretty spicy area, let's say, and you've dealt with probably quite a few people who, let's say, are less than friendly toward the police. What is it that you feel that maybe would be something better than what exists already that would actually work? Because we see breakdowns of the tasers not working all the time, the method of deployment of the tasers. So what is something in like the perfect like Star Wars Jedi world that you think would be a viable solution when it comes to dealing with someone who is not listening to you and is becoming a potential threat, but doesn't kill them?
I don't know. If I knew the solution to that, we wouldn't be talking and I would be skiing somewhere right now. Just dropped off in my private helicopter, but I think most of the problems that we see with tasers are not an issue with taser itself. It's with misapplication of it. I've seen lots of misapplications over the years. And I think our problem with tasers isn't necessarily the taser itself. And taser's gone a long way to try to make 2 and 3 shot tasers, try to mitigate some of the problems. They've come up with new cartridges to try to minimize those problems. I think that when taser first came out, it became the wonder weapon and people have forgotten about everything else. And so it's become the universal solution for problems instead of one of many solutions for problems. Yeah. And because of that, now you've got companies like Bolo Wrap that are like, we're going to take the problem of people falling when you tasing them and hitting and getting hit in the head, and then we're going to make it a pretty much guarantee by boloing their legs together. People try to come up with.
What are we, the Thundercats?
Every solution that I've seen has just kind of seemed a little silly on that front. And what I think the issue is, it's one of the areas that I think law enforcement has a problem, is that we don't do. One is that we allow less lethal force companies to design the training for those products. And so they're looking to design a training to lower their liability and not necessarily to make the product effective and to lower the likelihood of injury or death to the people involved. They're just looking at, like, how could this not be our fault? I think a lot of the times. Yeah. And I'm not saying any particular company is doing that, but we have to look at it, like I said, a realistic threat assessment. The longer we fight with someone, the more likely someone is to get hurt.
Yeah.
There's a direct correlation. And it's almost the law of law enforcement fighting. The longer the fight goes on, the more likely someone is to get hurt. So, a lot of people, like, departments make policies, or you get a training and they're like, well, we need to try, if this person's, they're balling their fists up and they're squaring up with them, pull the taser out, tell them you're going to tase them first. And sometimes I look at that and be like, well, if someone tells you that they're an asshole, you should probably believe them.
Yeah.
If they're saying they're going to kick your ass and then they ball their fists up and they square up with you,
they're probably looking to fight.
I think, especially on body camera, like back in the day, you'd be like, oh, people could say whatever they want to justify this. Like, well, like now you've got them on video saying they're going to kill you and they're squaring up and, they're balling their fists and I'm going to kick your ass and they're obviously out of their mind. Maybe it's a good idea that at that stage, instead of prioritizing warning them that we're going to tase them, maybe one person talks to them and the other one works their way around to the side where they're not going to see where the taser's coming from. And I think some of that is a lack of scenario-based training between talking to people and use of lethal force. There's very little scenario-based training between there. So I don't think it's necessarily a product issue, and I welcome any new, less lethal products that we can get our hands on and look at and try to openly evaluate based upon the needs of law enforcement. But I think that what we have now is a lot of legacy products that we know work for certain applications. We've got a lot of mid-range products that came out, like things like OC spray that came out that have certain applications, things like batons that have been around as long as people have been cops, and then new stuff like tasers, relatively new things that if we use more scenario-based training upon when to apply those things and design tactics around how to apply them, I think it would do more help than creating a newer, cooler widget.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the cool guy thing to say, but I think it's the reality of it. Like, I've never been in a scenario where they were like, at the end of the scenario, they're like, do you think maybe OC spray would have been a good solution for this? Or do you think maybe using your baton would have been a good solution for this? But I see a lot of them that are like, well, maybe we could have talked him down. Maybe we should have shot him. And I think the full range of scenario training would be taking someone from a domestic and making it so that that domestic could go any route. If I hand you one of these and say, all right, Suresh, we're going to do this scenario training, put this in your waistband, and we're going to, what's coming.
Yeah.
Right? You're either talking to them or they're getting shot. And I think that's silly. And I don't think anybody's saying that, right? So I don't necessarily think we need new widgets. I think we need better application of the stuff that we have by thinking out the problem in advance. When I get a new guy on the street and we do our first felony traffic stop, if there's enough cops there where I can kind of just stay with that new guy and direct him, like, here's what we're going to do, I'll get behind him and get in his ear, be like, all right, we're going to stand here. We're going to point our pistol over there. What's our job? If that guy comes out, we got to deal with it. Okay, but let's run through scenarios here, right? Like, they're yelling at him. If he comes out with a pistol, what are we doing? Let's decide in advance so we know what's going on. Like, we need to start going through those things. And I think scenario-based training on stuff other than lethal force is lacking in law enforcement. I think something people are talking about because it costs a lot more money and it doesn't allow them to sell a widget.
Yeah. I think you're right. You're 100% right. And I think that, the reality of the job when, to close on this, the reality of the job, like when you get on that felony stop, like a lot of the training that you received in the academy, the training you received on FTO, when you're there, there's a line of patrol cars. You have a guy in a car that may have a weapon, that stolen a car. He may have a hostage in the car. You don't know. And you're wondering, okay, how am I going to manage this situation of this guy popping out? I remember that was the first time I realized, I'm like, wow, I really don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm really not ready for this. And it really took being in that situation to now go back afterwards and say, what could have gone wrong? Could have there been a crossfire situation? Could there have been more distance? Whatever it may be, we all kind of go through in our head. And there was no body cams then. So it was not like you could kind of review the body cam footage. There was dash cam, but you think about those, and those situations are some of the situations, not felony stops per se, but a lot of the, let me say, elevated situations that spawned a lot of the development of the gear, because I realized it was in those moments that, like, when you're fighting with someone and they have a knife and you're like, my gloves are not cut resistant right now. So this is gonna maybe be bad if I got to try to fight this knife out of this guy's hand, and I was wearing Rawlings baseball gloves, so I was like, oh man, so little things like that are, like the mother of invention. So it was good to be on the job and experience those times, because at the end of the day, you want to be comfortable, you want to be fit, obviously, but the incidents that could kill you, those are the moments where you say, okay, let me not have a gear breakdown and let me not have a training breakdown, because in this moment, that can't fly. That's just unacceptable. And, I would take those things to my private life too. You have a family, and when you're out and about with your family, I'm sure you're thinking about some of the things that, of course, you've learned during your career on the job, things you're looking at, people you're noticing, and also maybe, avenues of escape, things like that. And those are the things that I feel that when you're doing your videos, I like your gear, your what's in my bag videos get millions of views. But I think for a lot of the guys out there that are going to now watch this video, maybe go to your channel, the videos of the training, those are the ones that are probably going to save your life. The video about the cool flashlight is cool. the video about the cool, tchotchke or widget is cool, but those training videos on your channel are the ones that I know I personally appreciate the most, because the cool boots aren't going to get you home alive, but the learning how to properly clear a building so you don't go around the corner blind and get like capped in the head, that's kind of an important video, because if you're laying there with the bullet in your head but you got nice boots on when your partner comes around the corner, it doesn't really help anyone. So thank you for doing that, because I know that that those aren't the sexiest videos that are getting the most views, and let's be honest, not making you the most money, but you're
Well, no, they
still
don't make any money.
committed. Right. So
They don't make any money.
You're still committed to doing those, where a lot of people would probably just look at the algorithm, look at the numbers, and say, those videos aren't making me money. These videos are, where I'm like unwrapping some widget, so I'm going to stick to the widget videos and screw the other things. No, you still dedicate a piece of your time to the training videos, which is awesome. So, I thank you for that. And I thank you for the feedback that you've given 221B on some of the honest product reviews. You've done some, a lot of good reviews. You've done some critical reviews, and we like that. That's awesome. That's like what we want to see, because we know that people are not like, oh, this guy Tommy, he loves 221B, whatever they put out. Like, no, you've been critical on some of our stuff, and you give feedback on when you see a breakdown and you and I talk. You're like, hey, you might want to think about this. Hey, you want to think about this. And that's how we progress. That's how 221B is going to come out with better gear, more innovative gear, and ultimately, the ultimate goal is to help keep guys alive and get them through their, well, it used to be 20-year career. Now these poor schleps got a
40-year career.
40.
But that's the thing is this. Here's what I tell people all the time when they ask about gear, especially on a live stream. I could, at this point in my career, and I could at probably the 10-year point in my career, do the job with a skinny barrel 38 and 2 speed loaders and a single pair of handcuffs and a pen and paper. Mm-hmm. And once you're at that point where you could do that, and probably a stick, right? Like, but it's a real stick. I could do it. Right. And it wouldn't weigh a lot, but I wouldn't be as well protected, right? Like my hands wouldn't be as protected, my chest wouldn't be as protected. If I had to respond to lethal force or something, I'd be behind the curve, but I could do it. And gear should always be in an addition to that.
Yes.
But how to do, you could do this job with a Glock 19 and you qualify with it and you can use it and you know how to use it. And now we're putting a dot optic on it. Yeah. You could do this job with a pair of baseball gloves. You could. But now we're going to put, cut resistance in them. And because I can do it with the baseball gloves, that, let's be honest, it's real easy with a nice thin glove to be able to feel and to learn how to search and stuff like that. But once we know how to do that, let's think about protecting ourselves a little more. Let's make our job a little easier, right? Let's get a cut resistant glove that's just fabric so that we can feel things through it easy, and we're protecting ourselves, even though it costs a little bit of money. Like the gear is also always in addition to that base skill set level. Yeah. And when companies make gear that does that for us, that makes a duty bag that I can actually get stuff in and out of without falling apart and the stitch dropping through the bottom, that's great. If I can get a glove that protects my hands, and I can get options in those gloves that protect different things, like the glass, it's not just cut resistant. Like if I get across a piece of sheet metal, it's not going to cut through, but it's protecting the top of my hand from glass falling on it. Like that's great. When I get a baton and instead of having to carry this thing around, it can be a push button and close. That's great. But it's always in addition to that core skill set. And I appreciate companies that make products specifically designed around that ethos. Like, you're doing this job, how can we now take the gear that you have and make it better so that you're less likely to get hurt and makes your job more comfortable and easier? And at the end of the day, like that's what anybody's looking for, especially now that people are running 12-hour days as standard. A lot of places going to 12-hour days and then 16-hour double, like basically what used to be a double shift is now, we got to hold you over for 4 hours. Here's your 16. Or you work 12, you're off 4, then you have to come in for 4 for the middle shift, and then off 4 again, and then come in for another 12. A lot of places doing that right now. I know you probably haven't seen it because you haven't done it a while, but like that's a normal thing. Like you get a guy like that, just something that makes him more comfortable in the car, or the gear that adjusts for you make a mistake. Like you don't feel that needle. You know, you pat them down, you didn't feel that needle on the middle of your arm, and then you go reach into that pocket, and it's, oop, oh, what's that? Oh, good thing I had that on, you know, like good thing I had that
Yeah.
glove on that protected me. Like that's the type of stuff that I like aligning myself with. I think that's what actually brings value.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. Well, Tommy, thank you so much. Before we leave, let everyone know where they can find you. Obviously, the YouTube channel, Free Field Training, but where else do you have little snippets, which I'm sure are all in place to drive people to the YouTube channel? So
Well, yeah.
where else can people find you besides the YouTube channel?
So I have a website that's, I mean, it's nothing super special, but it's, you know, freefieldtraining.com. I have an Instagram page where if you like watching the Instagram stories of middle-aged men with families and kids, and then occasionally something funny that's police work related, you could follow my story, but I also put posts on there, lots of giveaways and stuff go through the Instagram page, and sometimes I'm even humorous in the stories. So there's that over there. There's a Facebook page, although Facebook really throttles just about everything these days. I don't know how their business model is actually still working. Facebook isn't my favorite thing in the world, but I have a Facebook as well. I have a podcast, freefieldtrainingpodcast.com. It's also available on iTunes, and I forget what the other one is. I actually have a friend of mine who does the podcast. He takes some of the old live streams and cuts them up to kind of make more sense than me rambling on for 2.5 hours, and makes podcasts about particular particular concepts, you know, mostly revolving around the police training stuff. And we post them up there, and I think that's about it. And people can email me, I guess, if they really want.
What's that email address again?
freefieldtraining@gmail. I get about 10 or 15 DMs on Instagram. That's really the best way to get a hold of me. If somebody I get questions all the time about people starting the police academy. I have a whole series of videos about, you know, starting the police academy, getting law enforcement jobs. That's all up on YouTube, and I get a lot of DMs on Instagram about that. People with, you know, they want advice about particular things that they're dealing with, and I'm always happy to help people if I can. I will warn people, I don't know about law enforcement in Canada, and you know, so there's sometimes I give you my best guess, and I'll tell you it's the best guess, or I'll tell you, hey, listen, I really don't know, and get them in contact with somebody who does. But yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me. I'm out there. I'm pretty easy to find. If you see me in person, if you're going to be at SHOT Show next week, just look around and then look down. I'll be down closer to the floor. I'll be the guy that isn't bearded and angry. You know, SHOT Show is full of bearded, angry men. If you look around, look down for someone that's not bearded and angry, you'll probably run into me pretty quick. I'm pretty easy to find.
Well, I'll be seeing you there, and I look forward to our, you know, usually grab a meal and sit down and chat. So I look forward to that as well. So listen, thank you again for your time, and most importantly, you know, working anywhere is a risk, but I know where you're working is probably a higher risk than the average area. So, you know, be safe out there. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for your time here today. And I'll see you next week at SHOT Show.
What's that?
I'll see you next week at SHOT Show.
I hope so. Let's do it. You got my number. Let's hook up.
All right. I'll see you. Thanks, Tommy.
Take it easy.